Hey everybody, and welcome to the Deep Dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be tackling something that's been generating a lot of buzz lately,
Mm-hmm.
and that is Coquitlam's zoning bylaw,
Mm-hmm.
especially as it relates to laneway homes.
Yeah, it can be a real,
It can be a bit of a
a
maze.
bit of a headache trying to figure out.
So we're here to be your guides to help you navigate it.
Exactly.
So our mission today is to really make this bylaw digestible.
Break it down.
Yeah, focusing specifically on those laneway homes.
Decode all that jargon.
Decode the jargon,
Yeah.
exactly. And ultimately just equip you to really understand what this bylaw means for you and if a laneway home is right for you.
Yeah. Whether you're thinking of, adding one for family or as an investment property, understanding these regulations is really important.
Okay, cool. So let's dive right in.
Okay.
First things first, what exactly is a zoning bylaw?
Right. So basically, think of it as a rule book for how land and buildings in Coquitlam can be used.
Okay.
It divides the city into different zones, and each of these zones comes with its own set of rules about what you can build, how high you can build, and even how much of your lot can be covered by structures.
So it's about bringing order to the city's development
Mm-hmm.
and making sure, different types of land use can all coexist smoothly.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's all about that balance, protecting those residential neighborhoods,
Right.
making sure there's enough green space, and just guiding how the city grows responsibly.
Makes sense. And to really understand this rule book, we got to decode some of these key terms.
Right.
Our sources mention things like lot area, gross floor area.
Yeah,
Those sound pretty basic, but it's good to have a refresher.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So when we say lot, we're simply talking about a parcel of land, the piece of the earth that you own.
Okay.
And lot area refers to the size of your lot.
Right.
And gross floor area is the total floor space of all the buildings on that lot.
Got it. So those terms really help us understand how much we can actually build on a property.
Exactly.
Okay, what about setback? That one sounds a bit more complex.
Yeah, so setbacks are essentially buffer zones.
Okay.
They dictate the minimum distance a building has to be from property lines.
Right.
And that's really about ensuring there's space between buildings for things like light and air and privacy.
Makes sense. Our sources also mention density. Is that about how closely packed houses are in a particular area?
Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah.
Density is basically a measure of how much development is allowed on a given piece of land.
Right.
It can be calculated in different ways, like dwelling units per hectare or by comparing gross floor area to lot area.
Okay.
But essentially, a high-density zone would allow for more apartments, while a low-density zone might mainly have single-family homes.
So if I'm dreaming of, a spacious home with a big backyard, I should be looking in a lower density zone,
Right.
while someone who prefers apartment living might be happier in a higher density zone.
Exactly.
Okay, starting to get a clearer picture here.
Good.
So we have different zones, and the Coquitlam bylaw defines several residential ones, right?
Yeah, we've got RS1, RS2, RS3, and RS4 for single-family homes.
Okay.
And then RT1, RT2, RM1, and RM2 for two-family and apartment residences.
And each of these zones has its own specific set of rules, I imagine.
Yeah, they do.
What kind of differences are we talking about?
Well, the intent of each zone is different, you see, and that dictates what you can build and how dense the development can be.
All right.
So, for example, an RS1 zone, which is typically found in established neighborhoods, might allow for single-family homes with larger lot sizes,
Okay.
while an RM2 zone, which is suitable for higher density areas, would permit multi-story apartment building.
Right. So finding the right fit for your needs is key.
Exactly.
Now, remember those special schedules? We talked about schedules B, C, and D.
Oh, yeah, those are the exceptions. The
Yeah.
purballs.
Yeah, what's the deal with those?
So certain parts of Coquitlam fall under these special schedules.
Okay.
And they might have slightly different rules than the main zoning regulations.
Interesting.
So before you get too excited about a potential property, always check the specific schedules that apply to it.
Okay, so due diligence is a must.
Yeah.
Speaking of digging deeper, let's talk about those laneway homes.
Okay.
A lot of our listeners are interested in them either for family or as a potential rental income.
Yeah, laneway homes are a hot topic these days,
They are.
but the bylaw has some specific requirements and limitations for them.
Okay.
So we need to unpack those carefully.
Let's do it. What are the most important things to know about building a laneway home in Coquitlam?
Well, let's see. I think the first thing to understand is that laneway homes are considered accessory dwelling units in Coquitlam.
Okay.
They're secondary to the main dwelling on the property.
So it's like having a mini house in your backyard,
Yeah.
but with its own set of rules.
Exactly. And those rules cover everything from size and height
Okay?
to parking and even the types of uses allowed.
Okay, let's break it down. What kind of size limitations are we talking about?
Uh-huh.
Can I build a laneway home that rivals the square footage of my main house?
Well, not quite.
Okay.
The bylaw typically sets a maximum size for laneway homes. And it's often expressed as a percentage of the lot area or as a maximum floor area.
Got it.
And it's usually going to be smaller than the main house.
So it's about keeping things proportional,
Right.
making sure that the laneway home doesn't overpower the main dwelling.
Exactly.
Okay, what about height restrictions? Can I build like a 2-story laneway home that towers over my neighbor's fence?
Well, height is definitely a factor.
Okay.
The bylaw might specify a maximum height for laneway homes, and that height could vary depending on the zone your property is in.
Right, right.
But they want to make sure that laneway homes don't negatively impact the surrounding properties.
Makes sense. Now, parking is always a hot topic in Coquitlam.
Always.
Are there specific parking requirements for laneway homes?
Absolutely. The bylaw likely requires at least one off-street parking space for the laneway home.
Okay.
And in some cases, you might even need 2 spaces.
So if I'm already struggling to park my own vehicles, I might need to rethink those laneway home plans.
Yeah, parking's a serious consideration.
Mm-hmm.
You need to make sure you can accommodate those additional vehicles without creating a parking nightmare for yourself or your neighbors.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Now, let's talk about the types of uses allowed in a laneway home.
Okay.
Can I rent it out as a long-term rental, or are there limitations there?
This is where it gets interesting.
Okay.
While the bylaw generally allows laneway homes to be used as rental units,
Right.
there might be specific requirements or restrictions.
Okay.
For example, some municipalities might require the homeowner to live in either the main house or the laneway home.
So it's not a guaranteed slam dunk for generating rental income.
Right.
You need to carefully check that bylaw's fine print.
Exactly.
Okay. What about using the laneway home for family members? Are there any rules around that?
Typically, using a laneway home for family members is perfectly acceptable. It can be a great way to provide additional living space for, aging parents or adult children or other relatives.
So it offers flexibility for those multi-generational living arrangements. That's great.
Yeah,
Now, I know a lot of people get overwhelmed by the complexity of this bylaw.
I can imagine.
Is there any help available for navigating this whole process?
Absolutely. Coquitlam's planning department is a great resource.
Okay.
They can answer your questions, provide guidance, and even help you understand the specific requirements for your property.
And speaking of guidance, if you're considering building a laneway home, I highly recommend checking out Corval Homes.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard good things about them. What makes them stand out?
Well, they're a local company that specializes in laneway homes.
Okay.
And they really know their stuff when it comes to navigating that Coquitlam zoning bylaw.
Nice.
They can guide you through that entire process,
Wow.
from design and permitting to construction and finishing.
So it's like having a one-stop shop for all your laneway home needs.
Exactly. And they have a fantastic website with tons of information, www.corvalhomes.com.
So it's a great place to start the research.
Definitely, you can browse their portfolio, read testimonials, even get a sense of the cost involved.
That's great. And do they have somebody I can talk to over there?
Yeah, they do. They have a guy named Gordy.
Okay, great. Gordy at Corval Homes.
Yeah.
Perfect. We'll be sure to include that information in the show notes. Now, let's wrap up this part of our deep dive with some key takeaways about laneway homes in Coquitlam.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into Coquitlam's zoning bylaw and laneway homes, let's recap some key takeaways for those considering this housing option.
Yeah, sounds good.
The first and most important thing to remember is that laneway homes in Coquitlam are subject to specific regulations.
Right.
Just like any other type of building, you can't just design and build whatever you want.
It's not a free-for-all.
Exactly. There are size and height restrictions, parking requirements, and limitations on how the laneway home can be used.
Right, you got to follow the rules.
Yes. So before you get too far into the planning process, be sure to really familiarize yourself with the bylaw's requirements.
Right, especially as they apply to laneway homes.
Exactly. And remember, those requirements can vary depending on the zone your property is in.
Yeah, what's allowed in one neighborhood might not be allowed in another.
Absolutely. So it's really important to do your due diligence and check with the city's planning department.
Okay, good advice.
They can give you specific guidance based on your property and your situation.
Now let's talk about those two main scenarios for laneway homes, building for family and building as an investment.
Okay.
If you're thinking of adding a laneway home for family, what are the key considerations there?
Well, It's important to think about the needs of the family members who'll be living there.
Yeah, of course.
How much space do they require? What kind of accessibility features are needed? And how will their presence impact, the overall dynamic of the property?
It's almost like creating a mini community within your property.
It is, yeah. And it's really important to have those open and honest conversations with those family members
Right.
about expectations, boundaries, and responsibilities.
Communication is key.
Always now, if you're building a laneway home as an investment, the focus shifts to generating that rental income. But remember, those bylaw restrictions still apply.
Right. You need to make sure the design, the size, the features of the laneway home all align with the bylaws requirements for rental units.
Exactly. And as we mentioned earlier, some municipalities might have additional rules,
Right.
like requiring the homeowner to live on the property.
Okay. Good to
So
know.
it's essential to do your homework and understand the specific rental regulations in Coquitlam.
Now, regardless of whether you're building for family or as an investment, navigating this bylaw and the construction process can feel pretty daunting.
It can be a lot.
That's where a company like Corval Homes can really be a game changer.
For sure, they specialize in laneway homes,
Yeah,
and they can guide you through every step of the journey.
they really take care of everything.
They do. They handle everything from design and permitting to construction and finishing.
Wow.
So you can be sure that your laneway home meets all the requirements and reflects your vision.
And their website, www.coravelhomes.com, is a fantastic resource for anyone considering a laneway home.
Definitely, you can browse their portfolio, read testimonials, and even get a sense of the costs involved.
That's awesome. And they have that guy Gordy over there to answer questions, right?
He's great. Give him a call.
So if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the prospect of building a laneway home in Coquitlam, just remember, you're not alone.
There's help out there.
There are experts out there who can help you navigate the process and make your laneway home dreams a reality.
For sure. And as we wrap up this deep dive, we just encourage you to keep exploring and stay curious.
Always.
The world of laneway homes is full of possibilities, and with the right knowledge and guidance, you can create a really unique and valuable addition to your property.
That's great advice. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep learning and keep diving deep.